Hello everybody, welcome back to the Level 1 News. Today is April 13th, and today is literally just business. There are almost 30 business stories.
There's a lot of business happening because everybody has been holding all of their business stories for weeks, as evidenced by the shorter episodes of the Level 1 News, because of the global happenings.
Well, it was weird when I opened the Google Doc this week, and it was like 10 stories in government, and I was like, whoa. The last month we've had 30 stories in government and nothing in business.
Our government's also taking a 2-week vacation for Easter, which makes, wouldn't you like to have 2 weeks off for
Easter? Yeah, that'd be great.
It'd be nice. Well, we've got some stuff we need to do.
For the resurrection of our Lord?
There's some people in Europe that need some help. We need to vote on some things. We need to lend some things, to lease some things. And
We're kind of in crisis right now. Can we not take 2 weeks off?
I mean, maybe just stay an extra day, get some of that paperwork taken care of.
Or just take a long weekend. Why 2 weeks?
Why is this? Why is our government so retarded?
Why are they the way they are?
It's very bad. Well, we've got mainframe news. That's a computer, right? That's technology.
The first IBM mainframe for AI arrives.
It's a next-generation IBM Z16. It's got a Telum processor for real-time AI insights. So they've basically incorporated fun AI tensor-type operations into their thing. And they say, look, on x86, doing these kinds of operations is going to take tens of milliseconds. And here, it's a fraction of the time.
Tens of milliseconds.
They're hoping that financial customers will use this and that they'll use the AI for real-time fraud detection. So things like, hitting a bunch of ATMs at once with stolen cards have been effective attacks in the past. Perhaps those kinds of attacks would be stopped with AI in your financial processing system doing real-time analysis to say, wait a minute, something's not right. Maybe not. I don't know. These are fun systems too because they're so resilient and they're so well engineered that a lot of people are still buying mainframes. There is still a big market for mainframes. 70% of global transactions based on value.
I liked the picture over here. It reminded me of a fractal case, but much larger scale.
I think that's what they're going for. IBM's always gone for fancy, fancy cluster, fancy mainframe cases. There's a guy that I know that sometimes is like, ooh, I'll take that, and they just turn the rack into something else.
It's about the aesthetic.
Yeah, exactly. So, I don't know. And then in other news this week, a bit of a faux pas.
AMD confirms its GPU drivers are overclocking CPUs without asking.
The Radeon Adrenalin drivers, they included some stuff in the GPU drivers to look at your CPU configuration and say, hey, things are not exactly optimized. The problem is that some people had underclocked their processors and some people had made changes to their system. And so this would give just the tiniest of boosts to your CPU configuration, which is really against some people's wishes. I think it's borderline to call it overclocking. It's not a dramatic overclock. It's not anything as over the top, even as Precision Boost Overdrive. But it did make changes in the way that the CPU clocks, which perhaps was against user wishes, and probably definitely should have popped up something to say, I'm going to make changes in your BIOS.
Are you okay with that?
Yeah, to do with your CPU, even though I'm a GPU driver. So it's not great. It is also fun because when you're overclocking your GPU, you could also, it might be handy to overclock some of your CPU settings. And so it makes sense for that functionality to be there for that scenario. But again, got to ask permission before
just
you do that.
Just have a little dialog box pop up.
Yes. And in the shortest news story that we've ever done on Level 1,
Apple announces digital WWDC 2022 event taking place June 6th through 10th.
It's virtual again. I mean, they're probably going to do an in-person thing, but you can also just go for free online, which is the way that it's always been. And that's literally the story.
Maybe this is just me, but I don't really get the hype around Apple events.
Yeah.
They're just selling you something.
Yeah.
Why do you care?
Yeah.
Why are you here? Why are you on this channel right now? Store.level1text.com.
Speaking of which,
Uber looks to create travel super app by adding planes, trains, and rental cars.
Can you imagine the entire movie, the entire premise of Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, the movie, would not be a thing in the world that Uber envisions?
The thing I was wondering about, and they said planes are not on board just yet, but I was like, if you have a private plane,
yeah,
are you going to really want, you're probably rich enough, you don't need to rent it out. Doesn't Uber kind of depend on people who are looking to make extra cash? That's their whole business model.
The Airbnb of plane travel. No, see, in college, I knew somebody that was working on their pilot's license, And so they would partner up with a more senior pilot to get their hours in an aircraft. And it was pretty common that like 6 or 8 of them would get together and rent a plane basically, and then fly it down to Cancun or something like that. And it was typically on a little cheaper than a commercial flight, maybe cost parity with a commercial flight, but he was able to get his pilot's hours in that way.
Oh, okay. So it is still sort of like manipulating people who maybe don't have a choice.
Well, in the world of the TSA and what airports have become, being able to just roll up to
charter a plane,
and just go, that seems really pretty cool, honestly. There's not a lot of room for a lot of luggage.
I can't imagine. I'm thinking about all the insurance implications here too, because like, if you get a guy who's like, well, I need to finish my flight hours, but I'll fly my plane down to wherever you want to go, and then the plane crashes. Is Uber responsible for that, or
no? Probably not. There is flight insurance for that.
That works for cars too. But
well, at least there was flight insurance for the plane because nobody owned the plane. Like actually owning the plane is like you could make a lot of money.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
I would like to see more train travel in the U.S., but I didn't think that was real popular in most parts because our rails don't go all over the place.
Yeah, exactly. And this is completely from left field, but the schadenfreude of this is kind of fun.
OpenSea sitting on ticking bomb as lawsuits pile up over stolen apes.
So OpenSea is the NFT marketplace. Are they doing enough to combat stolen NFTs? Are cloned NFTs? Are they not doing enough? Are they doing too much? Are they blocking legitimate sales? Are they not blocking illegitimate sales? They're going to get sued as long as the Bored Apes are worth $30,000 to $500,000, $1 million.
There were some related stories to this where they've been sued into oblivion in the past, but they always survive. So
they're facing at least 3 lawsuits over stolen cartoon apes. We've this is. What were the symptoms of the collapse of Rome? Because whenever the future historians are writing about this, suing over counterfeit cartoon digital images of apes is probably going to be...
Rome's problem was that they expanded out too far and didn't keep enough of a home base.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Speaking of things that make no sense...
I figured this would make you angry. This was Wendell bait. Paramount won't stop making Star Trek NFTs.
Oh my God.
Do you own any?
No, I love this. It's the Admiral Pack. It's like, you could get a 50% chance of getting a Constitution class or getting a 50% chance of a Constitution refit. But the public sale, Soyuz class, Miranda class, Oberth class, there's a class 3 carrier. It's like, what?
Are these just fake ships? They didn't even bother making an art asset for them. It's literally just a list.
Yeah, the ships are stored in what Paramount is calling the Star Trek Continuum, which is what the company describes as an experimental hub that will house its first and future seasons of Star Trek NFTs. I'm never going to forgive Paramount for disposing of the... They built a VR version of NCC 1701D that was like... VRML, virtual reality markup language, and this was probably 15, 20 years ago. And then they decided they didn't want to put it on the internet anymore, and other people were like, well, we'll keep hosting it and keep it labeled Paramount, and Paramount was like, no. So when Paramount gets tired of this, it's going to go away. But it's not the only problem with it. I'm just letting you know that even if you really like it, even if you support this idea, Paramount does not care.
They will get rid of it. What freaks me out about this is like they're doing this to promote all their new shows, and I'm like, does this mean the Lord of the Rings show is going to have NFTs?
Yes. Oh yeah. Yeah, isn't that something to look forward to?
And just think, part of the whole story with like Lord of the Rings is like, don't accept weird artifacts from people you don't know where they came from.
The next story is a lot of fun for a couple of different reasons, and it's sort of the opposite side. I like this. This is actually a good thing.
Epic's Unreal Engine 5 is officially launched.
Look at that. That's game footage.
That's incredible.
Unreal Engine 5. That's so good. So Unreal Engine 5 is going to take better advantage of the existing hardware. It's super optimized, and it's really amazing. Now, one of the fun takeaways, if you don't know, the engine is free to download, but Epic then takes a 5% cut of games that generate more than $1 million of revenue. Look at the engineering and the math that has gone into this.
I think that's fair.
Yes, that is very fair.
Yeah.
Let's think about Apple and Google for a second. It's like buying a house. If you go and your house is amazing, that 5% of the cost of building your house is going to go to the company that provided the blueprints and materials that went into your house.
And the labor, yeah.
And you know, well, it's up to you to do the labor. That's the rest of it. But the company that's doing your driveway gets 30%.
When you put it that way.
Yeah, it's like Apple and Google. They're not. There's just they provide, you know, the driveway to your house. The Unreal Engine is providing the bones of your house.
It's providing the foundation, the framing. Yeah.
Yeah. So 5% is very reasonable when you look at that. It's no wonder that Tim Sweeney's upset about all this, because it's like, we only charge 5%. How are you charging 30%? Yeah, it doesn't make sense, does it? And only over $1 million. It's like, you charge whatever you want, but you get to keep your first $1 million, because good job you plucky little entrepreneur. And Apple's like, this is mine.
This is mine. Take it forever.
Yeah. Just
you made this. I made this.
Yeah. Well, literally, in the case of like the flashlight app and some of the other stuff, because you remember, I think the flashlight apps, I think Steve Jobs was around to see the flashlight apps, and he's like, no, we're not doing this. And then later, you know, they build in a flashlight app, and they're just like, oops, sorry, we built it in.
Well, people asked for it.
Speaking of that,
this is a horrible headline to try and read. Deception exploited workers and handouts. How Worldcoin recruited its first 500,000 test users. TLDR. This is
that eye scanning thing. Remember?
Yeah, and they only did it in like developing countries where people desperately needed money.
Yeah, this started a fairly distributed cryptocurrency-based universal basic income. So far, all it's done is build a biometric database from the bodies of the poor. Yes,
the people are still alive. Just to be clear, that's kind of incendiary to say bodies like that. But
once again, Level1 called it when this story broke. It was just like, no. It doesn't make sense.
The woman they interviewed in the article, they were like, she's like, no one explained what it was. They were just saying they're giving away free money. She said she talked to her mom, and her mom was like, get down there now. And no one explained to her like what was going to happen with her data.
We're going to take a picture of your eyes, and it's going to be in the computer forever, from now till the end of time.
But we'll pay for it.
Great.
Not what it's worth, but we'll pay for it.
Sounds exciting. In other news,
Plex wants to become the first app you open on your TV every day. Bold of you to assume that I watch TV every day.
Plex has in mind that, so like, see, HBO, Netflix, Amazon, Google, Microsoft Store, they've got a good idea. So they want you to be able to find whatever media that you want and then take you to it to buy and do whatever. That's great. The problem with this is that if they're successful with this, the incumbents are going to be unhappy with them. The people that own and control the media, like movie studios, Recording Industry Association of America, those people, they'll be very upset. And you might think that that's counterintuitive, but if it's easy to find media that you want to purchase, you're going to be less and less tolerant of wild fluctuations in price. And right now, what you pay for things is really obfuscated from you. You don't realize how much something is because you pay for it in a subscription, you might pay for it again some other way, and then you also pay for it with your attention through advertising and everything else. If Plex is successful with this, they are going to lay bare those costs. You're not going to, it's easy to forget that you're paying a monthly subscription and then maybe you have ads on top of that, something like Hulu. It's easy to forget that you pay a monthly subscription for cable TV and then maybe you pay a little bit extra for something else, and then maybe you're also paying with advertising, or maybe they're also getting analytical data, or maybe you also use the companion application in order to unlock things. So you have the cable TV subscription, but then you also have the HBO Max subscription, which is more or less depending on what you're doing on the TV side.
If you're able to buy it piecemeal, like I just want to watch this movie for $2.99.
Yeah, I'm worried that this will become a thin end of the wedge for the recording industry to find a way into your private media library, which Plex is very good at doing, and then say, oh, we can't find a valid license for this thing that you bought 20 years ago. You're going to have to buy that again.
My question about this as I was reading it kind of sounds just like Roku.
Yeah.
Well, Roku, I guess it just links you to the service that you're subscribed to.
Yeah, and eventually, once you buy this thing or once you do something with this, it wants to be the thing that, here's how you watch this, here's how you watch this again. But the media companies want you to buy it every time that you want to watch it. And eventually those things, those are at odds with one another. And it's better not to Not to help build the gilded media cage for yourself, and to instead fight it as much as you can and try to own your media and own it in a format that is not antisocial.
It's a weird world. I've been trying to buy, this is pathetic, I'm trying to buy more like physical media because I worry all the time now. I'm like, what if my favorite shows get taken off these services? And so like I've bought like all the seasons of House. I have all the seasons of Arrested Development.
Yeah, and
but then I mean I need to put them on like an actual.
You need to transcode them onto something.
Yeah, that's not just a disc, but I like to know that I have it and that they can't take it from me.
We have a story about them taking that from you later. It's Amazon and the other thing. But for now, we've got this.
Microsoft launches a new remote help service for IT teams.
You're watching this channel. Look around at the rest of your IT team. They're not watching this channel. What does that say about them? It makes sense that Microsoft would say, you know, it's really a terrible situation out there. We're going to have to help people use our products better because our products have become so complicated, nobody has any idea how to use them properly.
When I send people like a Teams meeting invite, someone who's from like outside of our organization, I always include a link to the help page. It's like how to access this meeting. Because I've had enough questions about it. Like, how do I join this?
Well, I mean, you can just watch somebody struggle to use Excel, for example.
Yeah.
And just not have any idea what's going on. And why does it keep changing the formatting in this cell? I want to turn this off. It's just right-click, format cell. No, they don't understand. But this is probably a good move because people will be able to use the products more effectively. And probably this is a good strategy for making the experience more secure overall because people aren't handling their security properly. So maybe this will be a good thing. I don't know.
I think this next one sounds like it'll be a good thing. Windows 11's refreshed File Explorer gets tabs, favorites, and a new homepage.
Look at that. And then look at this.
I'm pretty happy about the tab thing. That's something that's been missing for a long time.
Yeah, The Verge has got the write-up on that. I definitely think that the tab thing is really good. You know what else is missing from Windows is the ability to launch and sort of group things together. I want to be able to hit one button that will launch, you know, an Explorer window like this that has the folders that I need. Because usually a project is spread over a couple of different folders, and I want to launch all those at once, and I want to launch the program that I work with, multiple programs that I work with. And then it would be awesome if when I open those programs and I go to File Open, that it's sort of preloaded with the paths and stuff that I have to deal with instead of remembering the last project I worked on. It's like, I already opened this in the context of like a program to do this. But it doesn't, the operating systems aren't built that way. They're not built to do fast context switching between projects. They just sort of leave you on one thing at a time. It's very frustrating.
With the favorites thing, I don't know that they mentioned if they could do this, but like something I use a lot for like in the browser is I put my favorites in like bookmark folders. That's what they need.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of room for improvement here. This is very, very basic. Linux, surprisingly, is doing a lot of that kind of stuff where the context of a bunch of programs sort of lives together. It's like, oh, I'm going to create a virtual desktop, and then all the applications that I open on this virtual desktop have to do with this thing, and all their shortcuts and everything else will be that thing. You can do that on Linux pretty easily. This is maybe another way to address similar functionality.
Microsoft is integrating its Windows 365 Cloud PCs into Windows 11.
So this is Microsoft has in mind that for people that are working remote, they can bring their own computers, but you don't necessarily trust their own computers, so it's going to use their own computers as a glorified thin client for something that's in the web. So when you click your work icon, it will launch a virtual desktop with applications and everything else in the cloud. Or you could sign out. You could just sign out of your desktop computer and sign into your work profile, and it'll transparently connect to a virtual machine in the cloud that has all your applications. Neat. You could also do that on a virtual desktop. So you could create a desktop over here. This is your work desktop. This is your local
This is
machine
bad
desktop.
screen.
Yeah.
This is good screen.
So, and then that way you don't have to have a KVM and 17 machines at home. Store.level1text.com.
Microsoft brings ARM support to Azure virtual machines.
Yeah, they're starting to roll out really powerful ARM machines. I'm trying to get my hands on one. You know, one of the 160 core monsters. I did a little bit of Linux compile testing on one of the new ARM, one of the new Ampere it was 160 cores, and it was close. It was really close in performance to the AMD 7763. Now 160 cores versus 128, slower per core, but still, it's kind of entering the mainstream. ARM with high-end features like virtualization. It's definitely something that we're going to keep an eye on. So exciting times. A lot of companies want people to come back to the office. Don't know if this will do it.
Google offers employees free electric scooters to get them back to the office. And they offer a free scooter subscription with asterisk as long as you come in at least 10 days a month. And you have to use the scooter. Like, if it's wildfire season, and you can't breathe outside, you still got to ride that scooter to work. I don't think this would be enough to really entice me. To be honest, I mean, it's cool, but like a subscription service for a scooter, really?
I really don't think that would be enough to entice anybody. Like, there's already a free shuttle bus service. I mean, it's raining today. I'm not coming to work. Okay.
Yeah.
I guess. Sure. Whatever.
I rode you come into work and you're just sopping wet. Or, you've got the N95 mask because of the wildfires out there.
I did do that in college. Like, when it was raining, I would still take my bicycle, and everybody thought I was insane.
Yeah.
And a couple of times, I did the garbage bag poncho.
Yeah. I totally would do that. When I was in college, I had to walk most places, and I got to the point where I knew, like, routes to cut out of the cold because it was really cold where I went to school. So I would like cut through the library. People were like, what are you doing? You're like going out of your way. And I'm like, no. But I'm warm for an extra 5 minutes while I go through the library instead of walking through this cold, icy valley.
You just pop this manhole cover off and this steam tunnel goes all the way to where you need to go.
Yeah, that's exactly the kind of thing I would do. I also religiously used the shuttle bus, which no one did at my school. But I was like, I'm not walking across campus in the cold. You guys are crazy.
Speaking of things that are crazy,
Mercedes-Benz puts 5,000 workers on vacation in Brazil due to chip shortage.
Yeah, there's some vehicle production going on in Brazil. Oh wait, no, there's not.
I don't know what workers' rights are like in Brazil. I hope that they were paid. I assume because they use the term on vacation that they were paid, but maybe not.
If they're paid at a severely reduced rate.
Yeah,
just barely to make sure that the worker will be there when they come back from vacation.
Well, that kind of sucks.
Here's another story about Hertz. Remember Hertz ordered a bunch of Teslas? Well, that's not all they're ordering.
Hertz will order up to 65,000 Polestar EVs for its rental fleet. I have to be honest, I read this and I was like, Polestar? Who's Polestar?
Yeah, I guess the shareholders or the executive team was like, I don't know, Tesla's kind of on edge enough that maybe we should order from more than Tesla.
Well, I assume too, Polestar maybe was a little cheaper. Maybe. I don't know.
It'll be interesting to see how that actually plays out. Speaking of things that are wildly expensive.
Comcast wanted man to pay $19,000 after falsely advertising service on his street. Yeah. This is really common.
Yeah, we've covered this in a bunch of different ways. Remember when we covered the story about how this is probably 2 years ago that the FCC said, we think ISPs are overstating their coverage maps. This is, once is a mistake. Twice is sloppiness. This is happening hundreds and thousands of times. This is deliberate.
I reached the point when we were looking at houses where I just didn't even look at like the Spectrum website. I was like, no, I'm just going straight to the FCC map.
Well,
then we'll assess it from there.
A lot of the time they'll just do it by zip code. The FCC map, only the one that showed up in the last year or two. Yeah. And it let people log in to complain, basically. And so people would log in and be like, they won't let me get service here. They won't let me get service there. And if you're actually interested in providing service in those areas, that's a lead. And so the FCC could say, hey, Comcast, we've got a lead. Somebody wants to sign up for your service. You should, sign them up. And then they would follow up and say, did you sign them up? Oh, you don't have service at that address. Well, you told us that you did, but you don't. It turns out that 9 times out of 10, it does this as their area and the services based on zip code. Here's the other really insidious thing. This happened locally with Adelphia when Adelphia was a thing.
That's a name I haven't heard in a long time. I feel a chill go over me.
There's a name that I haven't heard it in days. So they absolutely, all of these companies have gotten tons and tons of federal money to build out their network, and they haven't. But what Adelphia did was especially insidious. they would not really properly service like where a new subdivision was being built, and then they would wait for people to call, and then the first 5 or 10 people, it was like, well, you and your neighbors could get together, and it'll cost $19,000 to build out service to your area, but you can split that cost over your neighbors, and so everybody would get kind of grumpy and do that, and it would be fine, and they would do that, but then they would also sign up all of your neighbors that weren't part of that. So you paid to build out their infrastructure that they then used to service other customers.
To charge other customers.
Yeah. So
to gain new customers.
They're making money forwards and backwards. And I'm sure that if Miss Lena Khan or anybody else really digs into it deep at a local level, you are going to find almost an infinite number of cases of, I would call that fraud, where somebody was made to pay to build out infrastructure, and more than the person that was made to pay for that build out of infrastructure is benefiting from the build out of that infrastructure. I'm sure that that's happening. I'm sure that that's happening all in California. I'm sure that if that was happening here in the middle of nowhere, that is probably happening everywhere else.
This was in Washington State. This
guy built out some of the infrastructure himself and was able to save some money, but it still costed an arm and a leg. When we built the telephone system, this exact kind of thing happened. It's like, obviously it's going to cost less to wire New York City per person for telephone service than it is rural Nebraska. And the federal government at the time looked at that and said, that's a problem. We need to make sure that we fix that. And they did a reasonable job fixing that. But for some reason, internet service is treated like a luxury and not telephone service. And it makes me really angry. Sorry.
Go off, King. Tell them about themselves.
I mean, you have to have internet. It's like if you
to function. Well, they talk about this with like homeless people. People are like, why do homeless people have phones? But you kind of have to have a phone, in case an employer calls you, but even just to like get hold of like applications to figure out what social services are in your area. Like, you need a phone.
There is no scenario where it makes economic sense to launch computers into space to provide internet service versus running a glass fiber.
Right.
The only way that makes economic sense is if you have so many layers of corruption and grift that it is...
It makes money for the people who are launching the satellites. And that's what matters.
It's just staggering. It's just a staggering level of stupidity. It's really just untenable. Speaking of staggering stupidity.
Google Play crackdown makes Amazon, Barnes & Noble pull digital purchases.
Yeah, so Amazon, now that the Apple case is over, it actually kind of went pretty well for Apple, all things considered. And so Google is saying, well, we tolerated people being able to buy stuff from not Google through Google apps. They're cracking down on it. So like your Netflix subscription that you can pay for through the Netflix app on a mobile device, Google didn't get a cut of that previously, and now Google will not let Netflix update their app past, was it like July 1's the hard cutoff. There's a soft cutoff before then, unless it goes through Google's payment processor, so Google gets their 30% cut.
Their cut, yeah. So my favorite line in this article was they were talking about like the Nooks that come from Barnes & Noble, and they're like, because you cannot buy books through that anymore, it's basically just another tablet. The whole reason they launched the Nook was so you could have an e-reader.
Yeah.
And now it's just a tablet.
Yeah, well, they pointed out that you can go onto the Amazon on the desktop and buy a book and then push it to your tablet, your Nook, but that's about all you can do. So... this week in mergers and acquisitions,
AMD to acquire Pensando in a $1.9 billion bid for networking tech.
Pensando, this is a good move for AMD probably. This has to do with networking and offloading stuff that the CPU has historically done onto an add-in card or something connected through the PCIe bus. And this is really exciting because AMD has ridiculous numbers of PCI Express lanes for connecting peripherals. So they'll be able to use Pensando technology with access to Xilinx technology and access to AMD Infinity Fabric stuff, and be able to do network processing and data processing and stuff like that on the bus before things ever hit the CPU. So this is really kind of a response to where the market is going. Intel and NVIDIA both are a little bit ahead of the game here for their technologies. And so Pensando as an acquisition really just means that AMD will have the option to do functionality parity with the like NVIDIA plus Mellanox plus their stuff and Intel's stuff. So AMD's now got the FPGA side of things with Xilinx, and then they got the microprocessor architecture stuff locked up, it looks like. And AMD's probably got an easier time pivoting to ARM, maybe even than NVIDIA, although NVIDIA I think would probably be good pivoting to RISC-V. But that's a story for another day. And then Pensando for the interface, the high-speed interface, and the processing that happens a little closer to the wire. So this acquisition will probably pretty immediately
pay off,
yeah. So it's going to be interesting. And Pensando needed AMD, or a partner like AMD, just as much as AMD needed them. So this makes sense.
Next story, Bitcoin nears full supply with 19 million coin milestone.
Yeah,
I think 21 million, right, is the final.
Yeah, but it's probably not going to be until 2140, until the very last. So like the amount of new coins added to the supply over time goes down exponentially. So it's probably not going to affect the price.
The price today, when this article was written,
was 45,582.
Whew.
That seems like a lot.
That is a lot.
Considering somebody bought a pizza for, 30,000 Bitcoin.
Do you think he, kicks himself every day?
Yeah, probably. If only I'd kept half of those.
Yeah.
You'd follow that. It's like, acquire a bunch and then only sell half at a time. Every time the value doubles, then you can sell half.
I mean, to be fair, Bitcoin kind of felt like a scam 10 years ago, so...
Well, it wasn't really. I mean, if it was so trivial. It was like, oh, we can just do that and it's fine.
Who knew that it would be this way?
Speaking of who knew that it would be this way...
Union chief vows to pressure Amazon after historic New York vote. He sounded like he was out for blood in this article.
They really did. They really, really did. I don't know if there's anything that's going to come of it, but there's a couple of instances maybe of managers approaching people and saying, you need to come to this mandatory company meeting. And in the mandatory company meeting, it is, here's why we want you to vote against unionization. And that is probably illegal.
Well, I think they're contesting the vote right now.
Yeah.
Amazon is contesting this vote, but...
We'll see how that plays out for them. And we'll see how this plays out for Bloomberg.
OpenBB wants to be an open source challenger to Bloomberg Terminal.
So the Bloomberg Terminal is used for trading, and I'm sure that a lot of you can probably tell, a lot of commenters can probably tell you more about it than I can. But Bloomberg...
It had been used for 40 years.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about this prior to reading this article.
Yeah. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. It might be really good.
They mentioned that they didn't want to replace it necessarily. They just wanted to offer an alternative.
And build in some AI stuff, because AI stuff is all the new hotness. So you can do stuff.
I wonder how long before they get angry that someone else built something. It's 20,000 a year?
Yeah.
For one license to use the other one.
Typically, if you have a Bloomberg terminal, you're making a lot of money from that stuff. Must be nice. Probably real stressful.
$20,000.
Yeah. Can I get a cut? Thank you.
Just send me $20,000 for the price of one access for Bloomberg Terminal.
Woo! Speaking of somebody that needs their cut.
Oh, I should have put this with the other one about where they push over-the-air updates. Audi owner finds basic HVAC function paywalled after pressing the button for it.
Remember how you would buy a car and there would be all those blank things and it's like, well, those are options I didn't buy. Well, now they put the button in, and when you hit the button, it's just you don't have that. There's not even an option to buy in the menu.
Oh, I'm sure there will be though.
That function hasn't been purchased.
I'm sure that will, and I hate that. Just sell me a car and don't constantly try to upsell. You're going to be advertised to in your car. There's no escape.
Yeah, it's just...
I just don't want to see advertisements anymore.
It turns out, I guess, that it's capable of doing 3-zone climate control. It just doesn't want you to be able to do that.
I was imagining you would have no air at all. And as someone who drove a car without air for a long time, that is miserable.
Yeah, I mean, that's, certainly if you're a country facing sanctions right now, how many Teslas are over there? How many Volvos? How many, relatively recent BMWs and Mercedes? How many iPhones? How many Android phones?
That could all just be cut off.
All those could be turned off. It could get real bad real fast. So, but again, if you're not America and you're looking at that, you're maybe saying, ooh, maybe we shouldn't allow devices to be designed that way.
Yeah.
Coming into our country.
Where someone has an off switch 1,000 miles away.
Yeah, what if some crazy person ends up in power for some reason, and they want to start turning that stuff off when this country hasn't done anything wrong?
Or just a bad actor gets in and then finds your kill switch.
Oh, another missort.
Yeah, I should have put this in earlier. Apple employees threatened to quit because Tim Cook told them to come back to the office.
We built this giant spaceship office that electrocutes birds that try to land on it, and you don't want to come work here? What's wrong with you?
The way that headline was worded, it kind of sounds like it was because of Tim Cook. Like, if anyone else at the company had asked him to come back, they'd been like, okay, but just because it was Tim, no.
No one wants to come back to work.
Yeah, they're like, I can get my work done at home. I don't know why I need to be here just to sit in my cubicle.
I mean, that's reasonable to an extent. It's like,
sometimes you have to come in to do stuff, but like every day, most of the time, that's not necessary if you're doing the kind of stuff we do.
I can't get my work done because they keep wanting me to come to the office.
Yeah. Well, because sometimes you have people stop by your desk to ask you questions, or like someone's being loud, someone's eating something nasty at their desk.
Sometimes you lose a little bit of an opportunity for mentoring too.
Yeah, well, that's the opposite end of the coin, but
yeah.
It depends on your office and I guess where you are in your career.
Speaking of FOMO and lost opportunities,
Ubisoft says more of its games will be getting NFTs despite the initial backlash. Who wants this? But the CEO was like, they just don't know they want it yet. His thing was that if you quit playing the game, you could sell your items on the NFT marketplace. But
why?
Why?
It's like selling your Xbox achievements.
The thing that made me angry about that when the CEO comment was read was like, I'm thinking about games like Overwatch where I have thousands of loot boxes because I just don't care. They'll probably end up doing a marketplace in the same way they're going to do it, but like, I just want to be able to transfer them, say, to like a friend who really likes loot boxes. But I can't do that. You can't just give them to someone. They have to be sold. Everything is a transaction.
Speaking of things that seem okay, but then are actually terrible.
Activision Blizzard to convert 1,000 QA workers to full-time positions. They will be getting $20 an hour.
Now, this seems really good, but...
Well, it has to be your U.S. QA workers. So how much of their QA team is going to be outsourced?
Oh, no, I'm in Qatar. No.
Yeah, so how much of that is, okay, we're going to get rid of them. But also, scroll down here. They will not be extending this offer to, I think it was Raven, who was the people who were trying to unionize at Blizzard.
You see what you get, unionizers? You see what you get?
Yeah, they were like, no, sorry, that doesn't extend to those people.
Again, I think that should be about as legal as you should join the mandatory company meeting where we talk about how evil unionization is.
Walmart was real bad about that. I never worked at Walmart, but a few of my friends did, and they're like, so I did all my training videos, and then they just made me watch an hour-long video about how unions are bad.
It's not good.
So yeah, Blizzard, the headline sounds great, and then you read the follow-ups at the end of the article, and it's actually kind of terrible.
All right, what do we got for Friday? A lot of nonsense.
It's a lot of nonsense, and then we're doing social and robot.
Social?
That'll be another like 30-story block. Woo! It was all business today.
See you there. Thanks for hanging out.
Bye!